Go, feel that. Did you feel that? Beautiful. Just beautiful. Wow. My goodness gracious. Ever feel like there are two voices inside your head? One voice is saying you're weak, the other one's saying you're strong. One voice says you don't belong, the other says I am yours, you are mine, we are one. One says that you're not enough, another says you're all that is. You are my beloved in whom I am well pleased. Which voice are you listening to? Which voice are you listening to? If you want to know which voice that you're listening to, all one need do is look at your life. If you want to know which voice you're listening to on a consistent basis, feel what you feel. Allow your feeling tone to be your feedback loop that tells you which voice you are choosing to be aligned with. I am here to tell you that we actually have dominion over the voice that we choose to listen to. Now, if you're not feeling that, or if you do not believe it, take a breath with me. And everybody could take a breath, because there are times when each and every one of us does not believe the voice for truth, does not believe the voice for love, does not believe the voice for God. And that's okay, because you walk into these doors on a regular basis, because you tap in and tune in to the Spirit of truth in, through, and as your brothers and sisters, and what we're up to here. And we're speaking the voice for truth here, that we may remember who we are as spirit, and who we are as spirit is unlimited and free. Who we are as spirit is we're the creator of our experience. Who we are as spirit is sovereign. Who we are as spirit is a co-collaborator with the voice for God. So there's ever only one activity going on, and it's the activity of truth, the activity of love, and everything else is but a dream. You remember the song, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. I did not plan to do that. Life is but a dream, because I am not a singing preacher, as you can tell. In another life I was, but not in this one. Or maybe it's a parallel life. Life is but a dream. I quoted Charles Fillmore last week from the Revealing Word about what is Easter. And at Easter, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And then it goes on to say that in a moment-by-moment basis, we are to follow Jesus in his pilgrimage and his walk of awakening, of rising in consciousness to the remembrance of who he was and is, a holy and beloved child of God that we call Christ. In unity, we believe that inherent in each and every one of us is that spark of the divine, the Christ, the I am of our being, that aspect of the self that actually never sleeps and is always awake. And so during the Lenten season, what we practice, moment by moment, day by day, breath by breath, is a continual turning to the voice for love. A continual turning away from the voice that speaks to separation. And that separation, the original quote unquote fall, the separation from God, that in consciousness we embarked upon, we chose, gee, what would it be like to live a dream separate from the truth of love? We're only going to explore it for a little bit. Just like when we sleep at night, we know that we're going to wake up and we may have dreams. But when we awaken, does not the dream dissipate? For those of us who follow our dreams, we might write them down away because they become like nothing as the day goes on. They fade. This is what awakening is about. It's choosing to allow that still small voice inside of us that reminds us that we're loved, that reminds us of who we are. And we begin to turn away from the illusory world, what Unity would say, the mortal mind, the race consciousness, that has somehow believed and dreamed itself to be separate from the all that is, and made up all kinds of stories about sin and sinners, made up all kinds of stories about sickness, and made up all kinds of stories about death. And when you're in that dream, man, it's real. It feels real. So I'm not saying that we don't experience it as we're believing it. But when we turn to the voice for God, when we keep hearing that voice that's saying, keep awake, stay awake, wake up now, beloved. And as the poem says, wake up, beloved, you're sleeping. There's no safety in that. You're walking through life asleep. There's no safety in that. Why do you think we have all the zombie shows? Right? Art is just mimicking what is happening, and we're walking asleep. And the voice that says, keep awake, is the voice of Jesus, and scripturally that comes from what we're going to talk about today. And what we're talking about today is that Jesus goes into the garden. He goes into the garden before Holy Week starts, and it's the Garden of Gethsemane. And in that garden, and we talked about the garden last week, so the garden metaphysically represents the garden of your consciousness, the garden of your mind. You could even think of it as where I cultivate and place my attention. Which voice am I going to listen to? Which voice am I listening to? And so we go into the garden to remember that we have volition, to remember that we have dominion over our lives. And we go into the garden to separate off from the dream of illusion. And we go into the garden to do our practice. At this point in the story, I'm going to give you my interpretation that is informed by Unity teachings and other studies that I have partaken of. But here's the deal. By this time in Jesus' ministry, he's already raised people from the dead. He's already changed water into wine. He's already healed individuals who are sick. He's already modeled that everybody is your brother and sister, even those who are considered outcasts. So his ministry thus far has been about, you can't sin or be a sinner. You can't be cast out. I'm going to hang with you, even if you are unclean, even if you are a Samaritan, even if you are a woman, even if you've been outcast by society, I have not forgotten you. In the eyes of the Father, Mother presence, there is no sinner and no sin, just a falling asleep to the truth. Just a falling asleep to the truth. And in that falling asleep, making up an illusion and a dream that we can awaken to any moment we choose to turn. And that's what Lent is, every moment we choose to turn. And Jesus, in his ministry thus far, has already healed individuals, people who were blind and now see, people who couldn't walk, get up and walk in a gleeful way. But he has one more thing to prove to us. And that one more thing that he's proving, which is the point of the ministry, is the resurrection and consciousness that there can be no death. That you are not a body, we are not bodies, that we rise continuously, that our life is eternal. And if he can heal in human consciousness concepts of sin, sickness, and death, man, that's the trifecta of the dream. You knock that trifecta out and you are blown awake. But that might just be a little difficult for us. So most of us partake of awakening a little bit at a time, so our psyche doesn't freak out on us, right? So, so we have our little challenges in life. We have our little challenges in life. Do you not want to know? Don't you want to know how to meet those challenges as they arise? Don't you want to know how to make good decisions? Don't you want to know the right way to walk your walk? Well, he's about to tell you. He's about to show you. But the one who walks into that garden, my friends, that one is already awake. That one is already Christ. That one still has a ministry to complete, and it wasn't a ministry of suffering, of pain, or of death, but of triumph and light and life. We just focused on the wrong part of the story. We focused on the dream of the story. And what we do in unity is we focus on that resurrection consciousness. And he's showing us how. What does he do? He goes into a garden. It's a garden where he and his buddies have prayed before. It's outside of Mount Olive. And the metaphysical, symbolic meaning of this particular garden, Gethsemane, is representative of an oil press. So if you imagine there are olive trees and olives, and back in those days they didn't pop olives in their mouths like we do, I don't think. That's what some of my readings suggest. But that they used it for the oil. And that the oil, which was valuable, needed to be pressed out of the olive. Just like any A prayer chaplain sits in my office, and he or she holds prayer consciousness in the office while we are preparing for the Sunday service. They're anchoring a consciousness and energetic for us. The seamless awareness of the presence of God and casting forth blessings upon myself, upon everybody who's in service, and upon you, that you may receive what you are here to receive this day to impact your awakening, that you may live in peace, love, and joy. That's what they're doing. We model what Jesus is modeling. He brings in a consciousness to buoy him up. How many of you need a consciousness to buoy you up sometimes? How many? How many of you can't know the truth on your own? It's okay. We weren't created in isolation. We've been created in relationship. We can tap in and lean into one another's consciousness. Avail yourselves of one another. Invite your friends who you invite with you to say, hey, I'm having a health challenge, but I don't want your worry. I want you to know the truth. I want you to see me, know me as perfect health and wholeness. Or my beloved passed away or moved on in some way. I don't want you to kvetch with me and say how horrible and tragic it is. I need your consciousness to help anchor, oh my goodness, that life is eternal, that form shifts and changes, and that's okay, but the essence of love and the relationship persists now and always. When I can't do that myself, I bring in and lean into y'all. Are you going to be ready when I call upon you to anchor this consciousness that we speak of here? And if the answer is I'm not ready yet, then every Sunday, avail yourself of prayer. There are individuals here to pray with us. So metaphysically, who is with Jesus in the garden? I'm going to begin with John, who metaphysically represents love. So when we're turning from the chatter of the world that is about negation, we're turning and we're denying the power of it. We're demonstrating our volition, our sovereignty, and we're turning to God, which is love. And love heals all things. I know we don't think it does. We think it's frivolous, but it's the most powerful energetic in all of creation. It's no accident that love is what creates. It's modeled in how we procreate. That love brings forth new beginnings, new life. And so we turn to that. So we bring into the garden of our consciousness love. We breathe in and out love. And then James is John's brother. James represents judgment. But not judgment of the world, that judgment beyond that appearance to the truth, to that voice for God, that sometimes you just have to go in the garden and be still and listen for. And so it's not judgment of the world, but it's seeing beyond appearances. It's a spiritual judgment and understanding that qualifies and requalifies everything according to the divine order of love first, God first. And then finally, Peter, who I believe is the one who falls asleep multiple times, which represents our faith. How often have you fallen asleep to the faithfulness that God is all that there is? How often have you fallen asleep to the ideas that you cannot be a sinner or sin, or that there's a mark upon your soul that you must grovel and plead and suffer in order to remove? So how often have we fallen asleep to our divine identity of who we are, what we are, how we serve? So we might laugh a little bit, but every single character here is representing us, an aspect of us. And so we invite and invoke the faithfulness of God when we go in the garden. Take a breath with me here. I believe that each and every person who's in the vibratory field of this conversation is called by God specifically, called by Spirit, called by the heart of your being, called by love, to reconstruct the divine self in this experience, to reconstruct. Now, where do I get that word from? Well, I forgot, so I'm going to come over here and look. I forgot because I read it last week to you. And it was the metaphysical meaning of Easter. And it says that Jesus was born into the race thought. Jesus was born into human consciousness so that he might reconstruct it in conformity with divine law. This is how he became the way shower. He's showing the way. He's showing the way. And the way that he is showing thus far is to take that pause and that breath, to turn away from the chatter of the world, to become willing to take that belief system that's upholding this and to begin to be willing to let it go. The pilgrimage that we're on is deconstructing this thought system and reconstructing the thought system of God, of love. One thought, one belief at a time. We're pressing out the oil. We're pressing out the oil that we may anoint ourselves. And when we anoint ourselves with that oil, that elixir that comes forth from love, when we anoint ourselves, oh my goodness gracious, if you imagine a light oil upon your body, upon your being, upon your consciousness, what happens when you cultivate this is that the thought system of the illusion, when it comes your way, it just rolls off you like water off a duck's back or neck. It just bubbles and just goes away. It doesn't penetrate you when you practice this. The anointing of that preciousness of the oil of love, that elixir of love, of that spiritual understanding and that faithfulness, becomes how we walk through the world. And as we walk, ideas of sin, sickness, and death just fall aside. Keep awake, beloveds. Keep awake. Stay awake. Say with me, I am alive. I am awake. I am aware. I am alive. I am awake. I am aware. Feel that. Oh, feel that. I am alive. I am awake, aware. My being has this whisper that says, stay awake, beloved. I am surrounded by beloved friends that buoy me up, that pray with me, that hold this prayer consciousness. And it's right here, right where we are. I go into the garden to release and let go, that I may rise and resurrect in consciousness, that I might be free, that I might fulfill my ministry, your ministry, each of you, a ministry in God as love. Say, I have a ministry. I have a ministry. It's great. It's grand. It's glorious. Say that. Own it, man. It's great. It's grand. It's glorious. And guess what? Say, and guess what? All I need to do is align in the garden. I am love. I spiritually understand and discern. I am filled with the faith and the faithfulness of God. And so I say, thank you, Mother, Father, God, Infinite Spirit, that this is already so. Every time we rise to the realization of eternal indwelling life, making union in this way, we are resurrected. We don't need to wait till April 20th on Easter, but in the meantime, we're going to walk our talk, go into the garden, and every time we feel the pressure of the dream or the illusion, we're going to remember this conversation. But we're not just going to remember it here. I'm inviting this community to practice it daily, that you may die daily. Die daily. Practice dying daily to the belief system that keeps the dream alive. Die daily to that you may resurrect and rise to this consciousness that only seeks to love you and support you, that you may be who you came here to be. This is what I know, this is what I claim, and this is what I say, and so it is too. And so we take a breath here. And I invite Nick to take us into the garden.